Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malvis Nekesa Juma, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar under the theme Accelerating Action, Strengthening Youth-Led Movements in the Advocacy Against Gender-Based Violence from Grassroots Level Going Up. This webinar has been organized by BO Best Foundation in collaboration with Amnesty International Kenya Nairobi COC. Welcome, and maybe we can just say in the chat box where we are joining from and a little bit of what you know about gender-based violence. And as you guys type in the chat box, I could tell you a little bit about Be Your Best Foundation. So BYB is more than a youth organization. We are a movement dedicated to empowering the youth of Kenya by providing the tools, guidance, and opportunities needed to uncover and fulfill your true potential as a young person. Our vision is to see a future where youth shape their destinies and contribute positively to the society. In BYB, we have two main hubs, that is the Green Energy Hub and the Discovery Hub, which we are under right now. So in the Discovery Hub, this is not just a normal space. This is a gateway to discovery, empowerment, and holistic growth. This is where young minds are inspired to explore, learn, and thrive. So in a nutshell, I'd describe BYB in three words, that is fun, educative, and growth. In terms of growth, that is career growth, mental health growth, and general personal growth. Well, I'll take this wonderful opportunity now to welcome the Managing Director Be Your Best Foundation, that is Bonke Museve Mulama, to make some opening remarks to start the webinar. Welcome, Bonke.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. My name is Bonke Museve Mulama. I'm the Managing Director to Be Your Best, and I'm so excited to be here. It's a virtual meeting, but I'm very excited to actually see you guys, to interact with you guys. And the topic is actually very interesting. Some people don't relate to it, but I think is something we need to normalize. And I'm very excited to just to hear about what the speakers lined up are going to say. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this important webinar hosted by us, Be Your Best Foundation, in collaboration with Amnesty International Kenya. So today we come together under the theme Accelerating Action, Strengthening Youth-Led Movements in the Advocacy Against GBV, is gender-based violence, from grassroots level going up. And gender-based violence remains one of the most pressing challenges in our communities, and young people have a critical role in driving change. This session is an opportunity to explore how grassroots movements, digital activism, policy advocacy, and mentorship can empower the youth to become effective advocates in fighting against gender-based violence. So I would like to extend my gratitude to all our esteemed speakers, panelists, and participants for joining us today. I see people are still joining here and there, and your presence is a testament to your commitment to fostering a safer and more just society, which will be your best value so much. And we are opening the podium and the space to share ideas, to interact, and to get to know each other better and to break down this topic. So let's engage, let's learn, let's take action together, and let's be our best. So with that, few remarks, we open the session, and I would like to hand over back to Marvis. Yeah, you can roll it.
Thank you, Bonke. So we could also have some few remarks from Bada Odawa from Amnesty International Kenya Nairobi COC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today as we get together to address a deeply pressing and heart-wrenching issue. As we speak, countless women and girls are subjected to unimaginable violence, often in spaces that should have been their safe havens. In the face of this adversity, organizations like Amnesty International Kenya have stood as beacons of hope and resilience for decades. Amnesty has championed the cause of human rights, fighting tirelessly against injustice, inequality, and the dehumanization of vulnerable groups. You can all hear me. Today, I also want to highlight one of Amnesty Kenya's transformative programs, the COCs, which are the Circles of Conscience. These grassroots networks represent not only a commitment to ending violence, but also a testament to the power of collective action. They remind us that change begins with each of us, united by our shared responsibility to protect the dignity and rights of every individual. Our discussion today is not only about understanding the problem, but also exploring solutions, charting a path forward, and ensuring that no woman or girl is left behind. Amnesty International Kenya, who are we? Amnesty International Kenya is part of a global movement of over 7 million people advocating for human rights. The organization works to combat human rights violations through research, advocacy, and campaigns. Their key areas include fighting GBV and femicide, promoting equality and anti-discrimination, advocating for civil liberties and digital rights. The Circles of Conscience are initiative by Amnesty International Kenya is a transformative community-centered approach that brings people together to foster justice, equality, and human rights. Circles of Conscience are grassroots networks designed to create safe spaces where individuals, communities, and organizations unite to address systematic injustices. They operate as platforms to engage people from diverse backgrounds, encouraging them to use their voices and resources to challenge oppression, advocate for change, and support survivors. By fostering solidarity and collective action, COCs emphasize that change begins within communities and everyone has a role to play in protecting human rights. We can also act as individuals by getting involved, advocating for change, supporting survivors, signing petitions and campaigns, educating ourselves and others, and also by donations. Yeah. Together, we can honor the memory of the victims and create a future where no one has to fear violence because of their gender. Yeah. You're also free to join us as a movement. We appreciate new members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bada Odawa. So for those just joining us now, our theme, I'll just repeat the theme so that you can get acquainted with. So it is accelerating action, strengthening youth-led movements in the advocacy against gender-based violence from grassroots level going up. So if you can hear me, if you can follow through the conversation, just react with any emoji so that you can know we are together. And while at it, I'll introduce our first speaker that will be talking about the power of grassroots movement. And the speaker, none other but Pascalia Nyoboke, a journalist, youth leader, and human rights advocate. She is the chairperson of the European Union Youth Sounding Board in Kenya and a global with Amnesty International Global Youth Collective. She has also served as the Kenyan Youth Delegate at the Amnesty International Regional Forum and Global Assembly. Pascalia is passionate about gender equality, governance, and social justice, using advocacy and storytelling to drive change. So give it out for Pascalia. Welcome, Pascalia.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to request the few of us whose microphones are unmuted to please mute their mics before I can continue. Kindly. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the very wonderful introduction. And also thank you for inviting me to this very important space. I can hear there's still someone whose microphone is not muted. And okay. Yeah, so it's a great pleasure to be here today to discuss this issue that is very urgent and deeply personal to me, and to also discuss how many young people are at the forefront of driving change at the local level. As you've heard, my name is Pascalia Nyaboke Oganda. Nyaboke means honey, for those who don't know. And yeah, I am honored to share my insights on how youth-led initiatives are shaping the GBV advocacy. And this is not just through activism, but through innovation, resilience, and community-driven solutions. And whoever, Bonke, I will be prompting you to share the next slide. So kindly share the next slide. Yeah, so the objectives for today will be 3, to continue to create awareness, because like Bonke mentioned before, the people who still do not know about GBV, you tell someone there is such thing as GBV and they think those are stranger things. Another objective that we will have for today is showcase strategies that help the youth or will help the youth in the grassroots levels to continue to fight for GBV. And the other objective will be to inspire action. This is basically, or will be basically about a call to action. Next slide, Bonke. Thank you. The contents in these slides, I only have a few slides, and I'll try to be as engaging as humanly possible so that we do not get bored. As you can see on the screen, we will be talking about the reality of GBV at the local level. We will talk about why the youth should be involved in advocating for GBV and why right now. We will talk about youth-led strategies during this change, or to just drive for this change. We will also explore the impact of youth-led initiatives, what has worked for me, even in my experience. And lastly, we will talk about the challenges and the way forward. Next slide. Thank you. The reality of GBV at the local level. I want this to be a very engaging session, so I would like you to drop a text in the chat box talking about your key awareness, GBV awareness campaign. If you could design a GBV awareness campaign, what would be your key message? I'll give us 30 seconds to contribute to this discussion in the chat box by saying what our key message would be if we were tasked with coming up with a GBV awareness campaign. Okay, as you continue to do that, I will share what my key message would be. And that would be: silence protects the abusers, your voice protects survivors. That would be my key message. That would be my tagline. Any day, all day, every day. I don't know what your tagline would be, but feel free to give us your input in the chat box about what your key message would be. Next slide, Bonke. I can see Nelly Mugeni's input. She's saying every voice matters, gender equality for life. Thank you so much, Nelly, for your input. I agree, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. We will continue with the presentation in the interest of time, but feel free to continue giving your input in the chat box. So gender-based violence is a persistent crisis that is affecting millions, and especially women and girls. And I'm not saying that the boy child community is not affected by GBV. The boy child community is also affected by GBV, And sadly, some of these cases are underreported. And even when you go to a police station, for example, or if you talk to your friend and say that you were beaten by your wife or your girlfriend, they think it's a joke, or they make it look like or seem like it's a joke, and they think you're a Simpson or a Kafukusui or something. But the reality of the matter is that even the boy child is suffering. And these statistics, I was at an event last week on Friday, and someone gave a tally of the number of women who had died from femicide last year, and he said that the number is standing at 179 last year alone. And you see, this 179 is not just statistics. These are people. It's an alarming number. Nobody should die, not even one person. That's one too many. And these statistics, when you say 170, it's 170. This is somebody's daughter, this is somebody's mother, this is somebody's sister, this is somebody's friend. This could be you, this could be me, you know. That is why we need to continue to fight against femicide and GBV. And at the local level, GBV is often underreported, it is normalized, it is dismissed. And in fact, to some extent, it's even a laughable thing when you tell someone that you were slapped, when you tell somebody that you were denied food, for example. If you tell somebody that your husband decided you will not be going to work, that he wants to provide for you, they tell you that is love. You know, like, you have gone to school as a woman, you have graduated, you had a whole career ahead of you, and then now you get married and somebody tells you, no, you stay at home. A woman is supposed to stay at home. You sit back, fold your hands, and I will provide for you. And then you think that is love. And this makes everything just difficult for survivors to seek justice and support. When you continue to normalize these things, when you continue to normalize their complaints, or when they speak up, we just laugh about it. We make it difficult for them to come forward and talk about the issues that are distressing them. Next slide, Bonke. No, the next one. That's the previous. Next slide. Kindly. The next after this. Thank you. So one would ask, why then do we need to involve the youths in the fight against GBV? And also, why now? And the answer is pretty simple. The youth population is not just the future, we are also the present. And that said, we are uniquely positioned to challenge these harmful norms and to also leverage on the digital spaces to create awareness and to also build grassroots movements that hold institutions accountable. Last year, when we were doing the end, reject the finance bill, when we were planning for that protest, I remember the youths went onto TikTok and different social media platforms to create awareness about what the finance bill was about. A few, even influencers, read the finance bill to identify the issues that would directly affect the youths. They translated these aspects of the finance bill in their mother tongue and went to TikTok and went to the grassroots levels and went to their rural homes to sensitize the people about what the finance bill is about. That is the kind of power that the youths have. Even when we started the protest, the numbers were, we were numberless. If you tear gas us today and you expect that we will not come on Tuesday or on Thursday, instead of the numbers shrinking, we continued coming out in large numbers to protest against the finance bill. And also, that is one example. Even during the End Femicide March, you would expect that if the bodies are tear gas today, they will not turn up tomorrow. But no, people continued to show up because they believe in the cause, because they believe that GBV is not just a women's issue. It's not just a man's issue. It's a human rights issue. People came out in large numbers. We had 16 days of activism. The youth across the country had different programs or different projects to create awareness about GBV, and it did not end there. And what exactly makes these youth-led initiatives powerful. Number one, there's creativity and innovation. The youth are now using art, they're using social media and technology to break the silence around GBV. I know Javan the poet is in this call and he will have an opportunity to speak. People like him write poems. That is art. The people like me who are journalists, we write op-eds. There are people like Foro, for example, who is also a human rights activist, who does so much. She is invited to panels, she goes out to protest. We are creative and we are innovative that way. Another initiative that comes to play is peer-to-peer influence. Young people have the ability to just listen to one another, and this happens more often than not. It happens with their peers more than it does with their politicians, for example, or people with authority. And this therefore makes the youth advocates very effective in driving conversations around consent, around healthy relationship, and around survivor support. And even in my class, I have noticed even in my class, we have a tendency of listening to one another. We have a tendency of not necessarily buying, but we usually have very constructive conversations in my class. I am currently taking a unit on communication and gender. And in this class, it's usually an open dialogue forum. Our lecturer has allowed us to talk about gender, and issues like GBV and femicide have always taken the center stage. And you will realize that even when one of my classmates is speaking about GBV or femicide or LGBTQ or any other gender-related issue, we listen. We keep quiet and we listen more than we even do with our lecturers. Even sometimes when somebody is sleeping and the lecturer is teaching or somebody is chatting, we don't do that when a fellow classmate is speaking about GBV and femicide issues. So we have a very high tendency of listening to our peers, because you best believe that the youths of this generation are very woke. The youths of this generation are well read and they're very informed. So even when somebody speaks, it's not coming from a point of ignorance. And the fact that we listen to each other, it means we are also learning from each other and we are able to replicate what we have learned in our daily lives. Another initiative that the youths have used is community-led action. So many of us are from communities where GBV is prevalent. And I understand that there is cultural and structural barriers that hinder progress. I will use myself as an example. I have been born and raised in Kibera. And in that place, GBV is like breathing oxygen. That's an everyday thing. If your mom is hit today, and you want to report them and say you want to tell your neighbor, there's nothing your neighbor can do, because even her, she's nursing injuries from last night when the husband hit her. This is very normal. You go to the chief's office. I also had the opportunity to practice journalism at a station called Pamoja FM. Every day I would go to that station. You will find more than 5 women going to report their husbands. They're saying, oh, my husband does not want me to go to work. My husband hit me. My husband this, my husband that. This has been normalized. Even in my own home, my parents believe that if you don't listen to your man, that man has a right to hit you. And they also believe that no man is mad so that he hits you if you have not made a mistake. You have to have made a mistake, or you have to have provoked him for him to hit you, And even these conversations, as much as we're talking about them in platforms like this, you also need to have them at the dinner tables at home. When my parents keep telling me, oh, hiyo human rights yako ukipelekea watu utatwangwa, takuona hapa jioni. It is not just a comment, and it hurts me, and it's very heartbreaking, because we have normalized it. Just because your mother used to be hit by my grandfather, and I am sorry that you used to get hit, it does not mean I should suffer the same. That's just about it on the community-led and an example of my experience. Next slide, Donke. Thank you. Also, if you have a question or if anything is not clear, please put that on ice. You will ask the question once I am done with the presentation, which is not too long actually. So we're moving on swiftly to youth-led strategies that are driving change. I have mentioned digital activism and awareness campaigns. TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and X have been used to spread awareness about GBV. And this has helped to challenge victim blaming and to also amplify the survivor stories. I have noticed that if you look at the comment section, even in any social media platforms, there are always going to be people who are pro GBV and people who are anti GBV. And as much as there's usually a back and forth, it is also for some people a learning opportunity. The people like me who sometimes do not need to go through the video, but we can go through the comment section. Somebody's comment could be a learning opportunity for me. I could look at somebody's comment and be like, makes sense. I think I can implement this in my campaign. There have also been campaigns like End GBV or End Femicide. And I have to admit, we should not be talking about GBV in this day and age. GBV should be a thing of the past. I want us to.
One of the activities we should take up about this.
Okay, so I would really want for GBV to be a thing of the past, that if I hear GBV, I have to look up in the dictionary to know what that means. But sadly, that is not the case. Another youth-led strategy that has been helpful and will continue to be helpful is community-based safe spaces. I noticed one thing, even in my experience, as I shared before about the chief in my area. You go and report that your husband hit you, but at the end of the day, you still go back to that same house. That does not work. That does not work. I have seen places where young people are creating safe houses for survivors. And in these safe houses, Jerry, could you please mute your microphone, and Austin? Kindly. Moving on swiftly, I was talking about community-based spaces. So there are youths, young people who have been able to create safe spaces for survivors. And in these safe spaces, the survivors are able to access counseling and legal aid and peer support. I've also seen youth-led centers and organizations that offer free services where survivors can speak without fear of judgment. But my point exactly is, I cannot come to you and report about GBV and then I go back to the same house. It does not work like that. You're not helping me. You're adding salt into injury. Another strategy is engaging men and boys as allies. GBV is not just a women's issue. We need to include men and boys actively in these gender norms and in these conversations. Youth-led groups are engaging men in workshops. Even in this webinar, we have men. The men who are in this group, I want to believe, are he for she's. They are our allies, because we cannot talk about GBV and exclude men. Because even men are survivors. Some men are survivors, some men are perpetrators. They also need to be taught that GBV is wrong. Okay, and the youths, even in my experience, have been able to use workshops, mentorship programs, and social media challenges or campaigns in order to dismantle toxic masculinity. I also saw the likes of Akina Abel Mutua. They had this conversation during the International Women's Day, which is a really, really good thing. Another strategy is policy and advocacy and grassroots organizing. So the young people are pushing for better laws, and they're pushing for stronger enforcement and survivor-centered policies at the local and national levels. And the youths are using things like petition, peaceful protest, and town hall discussions, and they're demanding accountability from government and institutions. Like I mentioned before, last week we had an event on that was dubbed What Next. This is a post-International Women's Day event. And we were just talking about how when every day we go for protest, what next after the protest? Do we go for protest from Monday to December? I mean, from January to December, from Monday to Friday, without any accountability? What is happening? Are people being arrested? Are people being convicted? What exactly is happening? And after this event, we wrote a memorandum that we then sent to the technical working group for the one that was tasked by the president to look into the femicide issue. This is one of the things that have proven to be effective even at the grassroots level. When you're talking to your MP or your MCA, you could use such strategies. Another one would be using art and storytelling for advocacy. Like I have mentioned before, I am a journalist. I write stories, I write opinion pieces. There are people like Javan the poet who maybe write poems, and the people who use spoken word to express survivor experiences and to also just educate the community. Next slide. Next slide, okay, we are almost done actually. So the impact of youth-led initiatives, what in your experience, or do you think that these efforts that we are making actually make a difference? Do you think that these efforts that you're putting in place are actually making a difference? That is a question I am posing to us. Feel free to use the chat box to give your input. But do you think, in your opinion, do you think that the work that the people, that youths are doing, that young women and girls are doing, do you think that these efforts are actually making a difference? Okay, next slide. Let's see whether these strategies are actually making a difference. Yeah, the strategies that we have used, the efforts that the youths are putting in place, young women and girls are putting in place, are actually making strides. We have seen that survivors have been empowered to seek justice. People are now coming forward to say, hey, this happened to me a while back. What do I do? And people are only able to do that because they know that they're not alone. It's also like, we'll use an example of the protest that we had last year. There were youths or influencers or youth influencers that were abducted, and you could see even after the abduction, they came and gave their account of the story, and they were not afraid because they believed that they were not alone. There were millions of youths on X, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere, who were rallying behind them. We have also seen that the community perceptions is also slowly shifting. Now, more people are recognizing that GBV is a human rights violation, and it's not just a private issue. Nowadays, if you see somebody being abused by their spouse, you are very likely to help them to seek justice. You are very likely to escort them to the chief or the police station. Nowadays, people are not hiding behind closed doors. We have also been able to see young people joining movements. Like myself, I am a member of the Nairobi COC of Amnesty International that Bertha has just spoken about. There are different thematic areas maybe within the COC. Today, let's say we're talking about GBV. You know, I know that individuals, if I join the COC and you join COC and somebody else joins COC, we are turning these individual voices into a collective force for change. There's power in solidarity. There's power in numbers. It's not just Pascalia that is saying, it's the entire COC. It's not just Foro who is saying, it's not just, what's his name? I've forgotten the name of your leader. Okay, it's not just Malama that is speaking. It's the entire Be Your Best that is speaking, and there's really power in numbers. And you will be surprised what these numbers can do. Next slide, as we finish. Thank you. What are some of the challenges that you have faced? Feel free to continue to give your input in the chat box. Myself would be, even within my household, like I have said before, my parents are those kind of parents who believe that in fact nobody can hit you if you did not make a mistake or if you did not trigger them. You have to have done something. Nobody is mad. You cannot be hit just because somebody enjoys hitting you. And you see, it's sad because out here you are busy championing for GBV. Stop GBV, stop GBV. But in your own house, your parents or your brothers believe that you can be hit. And in fact, they will not be surprised if you get hit in future. Because they keep saying comments like, wewe ukiendelea na human rights yako, utapigwa, nitakuona hapa jioni. It's sad, but it is something that is happening anyway. Next slide. Mlama. Okay. So when you're talking about grassroots movements as well, we have community-based organizations in mind. I have been in forums where I've had people complaining about funding, and they're saying when you're applying for funding, some of these donors will say they want an organization that has operated for 5 years or 10 years, and you're just a startup. So obviously you do not have that kind of experience, but you are motivated to do the work. So there's limited funding and resources available for youth organizations. And we also recognize that many of these initiatives, in fact, most of these organizations, the startup ones in the communities, they heavily rely on volunteer power. You rely on supporters, you rely on people who speak the same language as you for you to be able to push for these initiatives. And sometimes that is not sustainable because at the end of the day, this volunteer also has other things to do. Or after some time, when this volunteer, I have done volunteer work before, and I can tell you for free that sometimes an activity that is paying, when this opportunity that pays comes up, you opt for that other opportunity and you leave this other one. You may have the best interest at heart for this other initiative, but you're like, at the end of the day, I still need to eat, I still need to pay bills, I still need to shower, I still need to look good. Those things are usually come up. And then there's pushback from traditional institutions. I have used an example of my home or of my parents, and I would like to also reiterate that even some leaders or some elders in the community level, they are just resistant to change. Yani they resist. They're like, mamangu alipigwa, hata mamake alipigwa, na kwanza alikuwa anapigwa, anaenda kwao na anarudi jioni kwa sababu kwao ilikuwa karibu. So if you're talking to somebody who believes that way, or if you're talking to somebody who has been wired by the society to think that way, it makes advocacy really hard because you're trying to go left, you're trying to make one step forward and somebody wants to take you 10 steps backwards. You're trying to say GBV is a no and somebody is telling you, no, GBV is okay. And sometimes it's even sad because some of these pushbacks are coming from women. Somebody tells you, no, me, if I'm not hit, that person does not love me. Somebody tells you, mi kama janipiga kofi ama kama hata janishautia, hata kwanza wiki ikiisha kama tujagombana huyu anipendi. That is really making our advocacy very difficult. Another challenge that we are having is safety risks for our activists. Many young people or many young GBV advocates are facing threats, harassment, and even violence just for speaking out. We have seen this severely on different social media platforms. You try to speak up against something and then we will greet you. And that should not be the case. And lastly, on the last slide, as I wind up, this is the last slide, guys. So these youth initiatives or these youth organizations are calling for more funding and support for youth-led organizations. As we have already exhausted, some of these activities would need funding. We cannot go out to the grassroots level if we do not have, say, transport, for example. We cannot be talking about safe houses. How do we keep the lights on in these safe houses? Also, if we keep the lights on, do these people in these safe houses just starve to death. They also need to eat, and they also need to do other things to be able to just grow. This is where more funding comes in. We also need stronger collaborations with we also need collaboration with policymakers and institutions. We need intersectional approaches that include LGBTQ individuals, persons with disability, and other vulnerable groups. We also need sustained efforts through media, art, and digital campaigns. We need to come up as youths with long-term strategies so that we don't talk about things that work for us today and they do not work for us tomorrow. And I would like, at this stage, I would like to just say thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I know I have taken up so much time that I did not intend, but I appreciate you making the time to just listen. And in case you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. And yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Pascalia. So we'll hold on the questions for Pascalia right now. We'll have them at the end of the session. So I'll invite the next speaker, and kindly let's stick to a maximum of 10 minutes kindly. So the next speaker to present their topic is Javan Ofula. Javan Ofula is the interim coordinator of the Missing Voices Coalition, a human rights defender and a community organizer dedicated to advocating against police abuse of power, extrajudicial executions, and enforced disappearances in Kenya. Is the co-founder of the Dandora Community Justice Center, Mtoto wa Dandora, that is MWD, NGO, and hip hop cradle record label. Javan also sits on various boards focused on justice and human rights. In addition to his activism, he is a performing artist using music and creative expression to amplify voices, foster community resilience, and push for systematic reforms. Welcome, Javan, as you speak for digital activism and storytelling, leveraging social media and digital platforms to amplify anti-GBV campaigns. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, as has been shared, my name is Javan Ofula, but mostly known as Javan the Poet. And on this particular convening, first I want to thank you for having me on board, for also inviting me to share my experiences, opinions, and also just the situation as it is on the ground, looking at the areas of digital space. As we all know, gender-based violence is truly a big issue that we have as a nation, but also that goes across the region, Africa, and beyond. And thus, then it informs why I, as a person, I do the advocacy work that I do, but not only on this particular area. But I want to speak to this because, as mentioned, I'm part of the social justice movement of Kenya, which is a community-based movement led and run by people, especially young people from various informal settlements. I'm also part of various consortiums or coalitions that work on issues of human rights, with GBV taking the center stage. I want to first start by what informs advocacy on social platforms, or rather on the digital space that now has given us an alternative. We've always spoken about the shrinking civic space, but yes, as it shrinks on this other side, we create and come up with alternatives, with the social platforms or the digital space being one of them. So the social justice movement, for example, as a community that is basically dedicated to fighting and addressing issues of gender-based violence. And this then informs our documentation of this particular violation in different communities, where one, we document the violations, do referrals, work with various partners, and also just do follow-ups of various cases. But that does not end there. As alluded to or welcomed to speak for, is that even documentation on the various social platform or digital space is key, because we know that gender-based violence does not only happen in physical spaces. Nowadays, we have so many cases of gender violence that are propagated also within the digital right, or rather the digital spaces. And documentation then informs not only the masses that use these spaces, but also helps. Hello, did I hear someone say something? Should I continue?
Yes, please continue.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So the documentation then informs the masses of what cases happen where, how, when, and how this can then be stood up against. Also, this informs of victims related action. How do we then act by getting victims to get justice, getting victims to get psychosocial support, but also getting victims to get support in the various spheres, healing, treatment, and seeking justice. Using social platforms then comes in so many ways. One simple way has been interpretation of the law, where we help the masses to interpret what the law says on matters of gender-based violence. Secondly, helping the victims to know their rights, because there are so many who've been violated, but in one way or the other, then they don't understand how to proceed, how to follow through their cases, who to go to, where to get support, but also how to make sure that particular evidences that are self-available within the space of the violation, available with people around them, but also that is needed to make sure that they seek justice can then be gotten. So using the digital spaces is that, for example, the social justice movement is we populate the data out there, we inform the masses of their rights, the victims of their rights, of the processes and referrals with various organizations that we work with. Secondly, is that we have also involved ourselves with policies that make sure the digital space is safe for users, safe for underage, and of course also a space that information is available for those that seek it. And this is where we have partners who have.
About archiving such kind of information.
Okay. Okay, I can continue. Yeah, so meaning that then the follow-ups are done properly, and then we can also articulate these issues to make sure that not that just cases are reported, cases are followed through, and justice is met. This we do in so many ways, because it's not only a shortcoming of those that are violated or are victims, but sometimes it's also a shortcoming of institutions that are out there to help. And when we say institutions, we've seen cases where even various police stations are not capacitated enough to have gender desks. So then this informs the conversation when we have with various stakeholders on how then to populate, on how then to invest, and on also how then to put more resources into such infrastructure. Another way is that we've involved, and this now will also touch on me basically as a creative, is that we've involved as many other creative means to demystify myths around gender-based violence. We've used creative means to soften the conversations, to soften the laws so that people understand them and maintain a space where then they feel that it's not a burden to learn, but rather a space that is safe for them to express themselves, but also to get help in. And so far, I would say, for example, the GBV committee of the social justice movement has recruited many self-driven young people to do advocacy around these on social platforms, with various webinars, with various doing questionnaires, doing social posts, doing animations, and even also capturing artistic works like spoken word, graffiti, and so on, that there is more and more conversation that is artistically oriented, but also that is hosted on social platforms. And lastly, is that we use social platforms to call out on various stakeholders to have consortiums, to have collective bargaining power, collective campaigns, and projects against gender-based violence. And such would be My Identity, which is a consortium of various organizations that have come forth to fight or stand up against gender-based violence. Thank you. That would be my submission for now, unless there are particular questions that I'll be needed to address. I'll be available to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javan. Due to time sensitivity, we'll take all the questions at the end of the webinar. At the end of it all, we'll take all the questions for each of the speakers. So next, I'll like to invite Mary Yvonne Ododa. Mary Yvonne is the Executive Director at Nuru Trust Network and a member at the UN Regional Civil Society Advisory Group for Eastern and Southern Africa. So Mary will be talking about from awareness to policy influence, strategies for young advocates to shape and influence GBV-related policies. Welcome, Mary Yvonne.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Good afternoon.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation. My name is Mary Yvonne, as I've been introduced, and I lead the team at Nuru Trust Network, which is an NGO here in Kenya. So just to give you a brief background and how we relate to the topic that we're going to be discussing today. And Nuru was founded with a steadfast commitment to building resilience and creating opportunities for marginalized communities across sub-Saharan Africa. And we're strong believers in the power of community-led interventions to drive sustainable change, particularly by empowering youth and women, which are the two critical groups at the heart of transforming societies. So today I have been tasked with the topic on basically how young advocates can now transform their advocacy into policy, and this is a space that we work in, especially with the UN Women Advisory Group. And this is also in relation to International Women's Day, which is a day to honor the advancement of women worldwide and male allies, and to recognize their ongoing fight for equality and justice. We firmly believe that this particular day, which in my opinion should be celebrated every day, it's a day of reflection, action, and a renewable commitment to ending GBV. In my session today, I will try and keep it to the time frame that has been advised. We'll explore actionable strategies to make that live. Because I believe that change doesn't just happen. It's driven by informed and empowered voices who dare to challenge injustice. And for me, my firm belief as well is that young advocates have the power to shape GBV, which is not a buzzword, but I do believe that the policies can be changed by combining grassroots efforts with strategic policy engagement. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. We've come a really long way over the years addressing matters to do with GBV. And as the previous speakers have emphasized, at this point in time, we should actually have reduced the statistics that are there. So just to give you a global context, UN Women is the agency that is tasked with carrying out such activity pertaining to advocacy and awareness. And according to their research, 1 in 3 women globally will face physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. And this also reduces the chances of us achieving gender equality, which is the 5th SDG. GBV is not just a statistic, it is a lived reality for millions of people. It undermines human rights, it stalls development, as we've seen across our communities. It hinders progress towards gender equality. But looking at this from a positive perspective, there have been movements, there have been developments. And I know each and every one of us on this call is an advocate towards this. And I'd like to highlight the Me Too movement, which I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with. This movement was started in 2017 that sparked policy changes in workplaces. But there are a myriad of other organizations that are working in this space that unfortunately do not have a similar visibility. And just to also put this into context, this phrase was actually used back in 2006 on a platform called MySpace. I don't know how many of us are familiar with it. And it was by a lady called Tarana Burke. So I would really like for you guys to also just have a look into this, have a look at how it has metamorphosized over the years. And then you can also just understand how it has grown to what it is right now and where the gaps are and how we can essentially step in. And having collective voices, we get to break the silence and we get to demand change. I know a lot of grassroots efforts struggle with funding, reach, and policy traction, but this is where all of us together can step in, as we are the generation that refuse to accept the status quo, hence the reason why we're here today. Could you please go to the next slide? It is important for us to be able to merge our voices together, as this campaign started with a public outrage that eventually evolved into a movement that resulted in concrete legal reforms. Our stories, our voices, how we actually project ourselves and our persistence can shatter barriers and rewrite laws. And change is possible when we refuse to be ignored. So there are more recent campaigns, just bringing you back to some advocacy campaigns that have taken a toll-free line that was launched late last year by the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. And since I don't have a lot of time, I know we are also quite familiar with the number of athletes that we saw either being burnt or being bitten, those who have died, which is so unfortunate. And now there is a toll-free line that has been launched, providing support for athletes. Kewopa as well has launched a campaign called Komesha Duluma, which tackles workplace harassment. And just looking at all the different stakeholders on this page, this illustrates the power of collective action. UNESCO also has a Safer Campuses initiative, which started and highlights the need for institutional frameworks in addressing GBV. So this is not a government issue. This is not a grassroots problem. This is not an NGO or the INGO space. This is every single person that needs to join hands in order to reduce the lived realities of what people are going through in communities. And as the first speaker posed a question to us, what sort of action are you going to take? What sort of campaign are you going to participate in to bring your voice out, for us to be heard, for us to be in safer communities? I think it's quite important that we all take heed, we all take our time to understand how we can structure the message that we want to get across, and ideally how to communicate with the rest of the world out there. I also want to highlight the digital space, and this I've truly been coached on the tech side by a colleague of mine called Kevin Waigwa, who's a passionate tech specialist. And basically, there are so many case studies that I can share around here, but social media and online petitions have been very, very effective in terms of communication, in terms of getting your messaging across. And this helps us to redefine advocacy. Last year, I know we've spoken about the finance bill, we've spoken about femicide, but it just goes to show that online platforms mobilized or rather sparked action in the offline space. And we are the first generation, again, I re-emphasize this, we are the first generation with the power to mobilize millions with a single post. But again, we also have to be extremely careful because with digital activism also come challenges such as online harassment and misinformation. And I implore you guys to follow Kevin Wago on LinkedIn. He shares tidbits around this. He speaks about this in terms of digital safety. And at Nuru, he leads a program called Vijana Digital, where he also coaches and trains on this. So it's important for us to use these tools to raise our voices, to demand accountability and action. When it comes to building capacity for policy and advocacy, I know with the youth space, there are a number of challenges that we can go on and on and on, but I am a firm believer of joining hands. I'm a firm believer of sharing resources and coming together as one to be able to lift each other up. And it's important that advocacy is backed by knowledge and strategy. Young advocates need access to policy literacy programs, to mentorship, to networks, and organizations that we have here today, like Be Your Best and Amnesty, Kipra as well. They provide essential training and access to resources to such spaces. Neurotrust Network also does. And by doing this, we actually help young people like ourselves to get around the policy processes and engage decision makers out here from the grassroots stage all the way to the government. And when young people are equipped with information, there's a lot that can change. So I want us to invest in whatever resources we have in our different capacities to be able to influence the future. And because we are in the grassroots, I definitely had to add this in to also show how collaboration can work from a grassroots perspective. Sustainable change begins in our communities. It begins in our homes. As Javan has spoken about the kind of work that he does, you can see how his community-led initiatives and the kind of work that he does spark such changes in the spaces that he's in. It's important to also work with different people in terms of capacity, uh, trainers who are in this space. It's also important to work with traditional leaders. It's important to work with faith-based organizations. And I also want to highlight, not just in Kenya, but there's an organization in Uganda called Raising Voices. If you have a moment, also please have a look at them. They are basically a grassroots organization that have been able to lead campaigns to influence policy changes in Uganda. Also, another one is called Empower Youth Africa Foundation. We have groups in Kenya, there's Contrast, there's Crew, there's the Kenya Community Media Network. There are very many ways to collaborate and a lot of ways to be able to enhance the voices that we have and the spaces that we're in. And my call to action, I'm trying to keep to time. My call to action out here, I want to highlight, I know there's a lot that we speak about in terms of accessing certain spaces, but systemic changes requires collective action. We need to work or move around global initiatives like Generation Equality by UN Women. And these are resources. If you go online, you will see how to register your organization or ideally how to engage with them. Forging partnerships with entities like Plan International, it's easy to push for legal reforms with groups like Equality Now and the Web Foundation. Also, the slides, the organizers are able to share it with you. And what I want us to do is to be able to create movements that will create changes and break barriers. And that's my call to action for today and going forward. Also, I really want us to mobilize community groups. Look, every community usually has a women's group. A lot of communities do this, even in those. I understand we live in a patriarchal society. I understand that we have cultural barriers, but if we do not take that step, it's going to be extremely hard for us to see change. So on our end, in terms of Nuru and the kind of work that we do, and we urge you to partner with us as well, we engage in a lot of CSW consultations, with the one that is currently happening right now in New York. We've been in consultations with Beijing on Beijing plus 30. As many of you are aware that this is the 30th year since since this was put in place, the framework. We also participate on the 16 days of activism against GBV, which usually starts November 25th all the way to December 10th. Gender consultations, so partnership with grassroots organizations, INGOs. We work a lot with COMESA as well. We also work with different agencies in the government. So ours, we firmly believe in advocacy, we believe in awareness, and we believe in taking action. So this slide also has some links whereby you can get more information and just have a look at some of the initiatives that are going on within the country, within the region, outside. It will give you insight as to how you can join up, how you can partner, what you can do for your organization in terms of visibility, funding. These are just some of the links that are able to assist you. So allow me to stop there, as I know I'm out of time. But yes, please feel free to reach out. We are always open to partnership. We are more than open to join forces with the different initiatives that are happening out there. And mine is to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mary Yvonne, for the wonderful presentation on policy influence. Next in line, the last but not least, it's Mumbiko Kingori talking on mentorship and capacity building. Mumbiko is stepping in for Willis Onyango. So Mumbiko Kingori is a dedicated advocate. Yes, so it is a dedicated advocate for youth empowerment and inclusive governance, evidenced by his historic candidacy as Kenya's youngest presidential aspirant back in 2022. He also contributes significantly to the development sector as a partnership associate at the Youth Cafe. Welcome, Mumbiko, and feel free to talk about mentorship and capacity building, and also make it 10 minutes to be precise, kindly. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you very much. I hope I'm quite well audible. Mumbiko Kingori is my name, as has been said. I'm trying to step in on the big shoes of my senior and boss and mentor, Willis. Well, I don't have a presentation, but I'll try to put the best I can out of this, and I'll try to keep it 10 minutes. So yes, Youth Cafe is a Pan-African organization. It is youth-led, it is youth-serving. It has about 3,500 members, member organizations, and about 1 million individual members. And I think, yeah, this was the right topic for Youth Cafe. And because of time, I'll just try to go through some of the few notes I've tried to put together. And of course, gender-based violence is a global crisis, and it impacts individuals and communities across all demographics. As my previous, as the one who spoke before me, also my boss, Mary, has said, 1 in 3 women experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime by an intimate partner or so. But to be real, GBV is not just a ladies' only club. Men also experience it, though often underreported. So at Youth Cafe, we try to approach it from that angle that as we are talking to the youth, we try not to divide them, young, men and women, and we try to show them that GBV really is a human issue. So we should look at it as that. But going to context, what are the importance of youth-led movements like Youth Cafe? I know we say that young people are not just the future, they are the now. And thus, they have unique perspectives, energy, and especially tech savviness is crucial in creating impactful change. But what are the specific importances of youth-led movements, and why should they be sustained to add and help? How can they help end GBV? First is the direct access and the peer influence. And of course, young people can reach their peers in a way adults cannot, and can even have discussions that it's not easily done with adults. They speak the same language. They say that they are tribeless. They speak the same language. They understand same social media trends and navigate some online spaces. They are online and all that. And thus, youth-led movements are very important in a way that they can reach so many spaces that even adults cannot reach. And you know that youth is an intermediate between the adults and the children. Of course, importantly is innovation and adaptability. And young people are inherently innovative and adaptable. They are quick to embrace new technologies and find creative solutions to complex problems. Of course, the third one is long-term sustainability and investing in these youth-led movements and youth-led CSOs, CBOs, and all that ensures that the fight against GBV continues for generations. These are young people. They have energy. They have time. They have more time. And if the culture of ending GBV and living together, as humans, humanity is very key as we speak about this. If young people can really embrace humanity, living together, embracing each other, I think it can really have long-term sustainability. Challenging social norms. I think young people really don't care about the tradition and all these things. They are more likely to challenge harmful social norms, of course, and stereotypes that perpetuate, gender-based violence. So, quite an important why we should even support young youth-led and youth-serving. And Youth Cafe is youth-led and youth-serving. Grassroots mobilization, much as there's a lot of migration to urban areas by the young people, most of them are in the grassroots. And they are good mobilizers. They have energy. And for Youth Cafe, we have really benefited from this because sometimes young people are pressed to the corner, and sometimes they're willing even to volunteer. Of course, we try to compensate them, much as we can. But young people also understand the local context, and they can tailor their interventions to meet specific needs. They are able to easily tailor because these are their mothers, their brothers, their sisters in the villages, and they have lived with them because young people maybe just have left high school, so they were in the rural areas and the villages most of the time. Real world impact, and of course, this is not just a theory. It has been seen that youth and young people, their leadership is producing real world results. And at Youth Cafe, we lobby the implementation of safer, public engagement with the young people in the cities, in the rural, and in the urban areas. And as I've said once again, we really try to leverage and push our discussions in the angle of humanity, and that we can live together in harmony without undermining. This is, is a woman, is a man, is a young man, is a young woman. Finally, the role of mentorship and the key actors, of course. Mentorship is generally about guidance, and one of the role is guidance and support. And when you have, like personally, I'm a gender inclusion facilitator. I recently trained with International Ideas and UN Women. I was training young African women on how to engage and sustain engagements with men and boys. And my mentor is the CEO of Masculinity. So we need mentors for guidance and support. And sometimes, I'm brought up in a very patriarchal society. So sometimes I almost forget that I'm a he for she and I'm a male ally. But he always reminds me because he's my mentor. And even now, I'm sure he's listening. And I'm sure if I say something that is not in accordance, after he's called Ken, he's an ED, Executive Director, Masculinity. And I can attest the importance of a mentor. I don't want to overemphasize on that, but yes, the first one is guidance and support. The second one is knowledge transfer. We don't need, with a mentor, you do not reinvent the wheel, and that's what we do at Youth Cafe. We match young people with mentors on various angles. Of course, our key areas, our thematic areas are democracy, human rights and governance, education, research and social services, economic growth, health and well-being, agriculture and environmental sustainability, talent development and leadership. And in all these spheres, we bring about, gender issues cross-board, not gender as women or gender as men. We try to bring the equality and the equity because, as we say at Youth Cafe, if women empowerment or even boy-child empowerment is not based on impact, it's based on, say, equality, then it is posed to bring a threat and it is seen as a competition. And, in every competition, there's definitely a winner. And, perhaps the one who is more muscular might end up winning. So why not address it, as a human issue, and based on impacts? I remind people that no one knows about the marriage and all that about Wangari Maathai. People remember about the impacts. So let's really leverage on impacts. Closer to conclusion, so we have said about knowledge transfer. No, we don't reinvent the wheel with a mentor. Emotional support, your mentor can really, step in when need be, and they provide a safe space, especially for young leaders to discuss challenges, build resilience, and maintain motivation. Of course, networking opportunities. I have personally been mentored by the speaker who spoke before me, Mary Odora, and I can tell you, some doors that I might need a lot of energy to knock, she just needs a call or even a chat to have them, open. My boss, Willis. So networking opportunities is one of the key role of a mentor. They can help open doors that would not easily be opened while they're not there. And they connect young leaders with valuable resources and networks, expanding their reach and influence. Of course, key actors, Youth Cafe is one of the mentors as a Pan-African organization, and organizations can become members. We have recently started a leadership academy and incubation hub. So indeed, if you have issues with managing, managing your organization or you're just starting your organization, Youth Cafe can incubate you. We have a library with all the books you would want in the world, written. We have an e-library and a physical library. So yes, Youth Cafe is one of the mentors that I can really recommend, that you can check their website and a lot of resources in there. Of course, our boss Willis is also one of the other mentors I know, and I would also recommend young people, please get in touch with Mary Ododa, the one who just spoke. Just even get her number. Look at what she posts on her social medias, even her own WhatsApp status. It is more informative than even any college you go. Opportunities, events, and all that. Yes, and I think I can add at that, but what are globally tested practices? Social norm campaign, I think a lot of them have been spoken about. So I would want to stop at that because of time, but who are the actors we really need to to push other than youth-led organizations? The government. We need to push the government to really invest on youth-led initiatives, create support. This is another way of reducing unemployment. Create supportive policies and ensure meaningful youth participation in decision-making processes. of course, civil society organizations like Nuru, like ourselves, like yourselves, the organizers, and thank you very much for this space. Of course, prioritize mentorship programs. I mean, I founded the Young Aspirants and Aspiring Leaders Network because I'm a former aspirant and I was in depression. And I know I was mentored to volunteer to Kedipa, the last is history, and today I'm a youth advisory board member with the European Partnership for Democracy out of mentorship. So let's prioritize mentorship. It's not always about allowances and, capacity building. Of course, it's a form of mentorship, but it goes along with direct mentorship, even just talking to young people on networks, where can they find grants, opportunities, and all this. And also let's provide resources and training, of course. To the funders also should also really focus on young people. They do not have very solid ideas and organizations, but they have impactful projects that can be supported, like at Young Aspirants and Aspiring Leaders. They are partnering with Youth Cafe because we're asking ourselves, only one person is elected in every election, and there are more than 10 aspirants, most of them who are young. So where do all the others who fail go? They are back in the villages, and everyone who dare to vie has, an impact project they can do at their village level. Perhaps they're not able to package it and all that. So funders should really look into how, otherwise the same organization will keep on getting these grants and all that. Of course, individuals to volunteer. And finally, to the youth, actively participate in movements, seek mentorship, and utilize your voices. I always tell my young people that the first rule of inclusion is showing up. Thank you very much. That was Mumbiko Kingori. I hope I have tried to fit in my boss shoes. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm here for any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mumbiko. I'm sure you tried to fit in your boss's shoes. So that is an end of our presentation from the speakers. Thank you for each and every speaker for sharing your good insight on gender-based violence. It has been an absolutely wonderful and educative session. I am sure everyone joined in is going home with something in the bank, something positive, and to drive change back where they are coming from or where they are going to. The next session, I'll open up for anyone who has questions. I think it will take, because of time, it will take 5 to 6 minutes to take around 3 questions. And any of the speakers can answer any questions. You can type in the chat or raise your hand. Thank you. I can see we have one question from Catherine. The question is, how youth serving organizations co-create and enhance synergy to maximize impact as opposed to replicating initiatives? Any speaker can just answer that question kindly. Or rather, we can have Mary to answer it since she's in that space.
Actually, I wanted to ask if I can respond to that one. So there are lots of ways that I think can be utilized when it comes to synergizing efforts. Let me speak on 2 right now. One is by creating strategic partnerships and complementing each other's strengths. So, as Mumbiko has said, I also engage quite a bit with the Youth Cafe. These guys have a presence literally across Africa. And if I'm not wrong, Mumbiko can correct me. I think Youth Cafe has you guys have a presence in 36 countries right now. Looking at the space that they're in, how they engage with young people, the different avenues, Nuru on this other end, as we are mostly in at the demography that which organization can take up the digital space? Which organization can pick up on the entrepreneurship space? Now, depending on the kind of work that we want to do and the kind of intervention that we are pursuing. Also, in the same breath, maybe Youth Cafe is better at fundraising, and us on this other end, we are better with donor engagement. So you have a look at the particular strengths that one organization has and the partner that you want to embark the journey or the project with, and now you see how you can pair up. And one thing I also want to highlight, we've also seen what the funding trends are looking like at the moment. So creating coalitions, creating partnerships, that's one of the key ways, especially with youth-led organizations, to be able to enter into different spaces, to be able to pursue certain activities. So just create strategic partnerships, go online, have a look at, I want to carry out a project in Kilifi, who's on the ground? This is what I want to do. Let me reach out to them and I'll see how can we align the kind of sorry, I think I got disconnected. Can you hear me?
Yes, we lost you for a moment.
Oh, sorry, sorry about that. I think it's the network. So yeah, so just to wrap this up, have a look at your partners. So be strategic in terms of choosing partners, complement your strengths, share your resources, and the last thing that I can say is have joint advocacy to influence policy. That way you end up strengthening your projects and the work that you want to do.
Thank you very much, Mary. What I can get from that is we need to collaborate together from different organizations, different NGOs. We can just come together and do things, partner and do things so that we don't have replication of the same thing and focus on the impact. I can see in the chat we have another question from Kennedy. Take the concept of youth cafe as an initiative. What are some of the ideas we can use to reach the youth, such as border on issues of GBV? These people have a lot of intelligence on the threat of violence even before it happened. So yeah, the question is, how can we reach the youth, such as border guys on issues of GBV? I think that question can be answered from Mumbiku from Youth Cafe.
Indeed, what we are doing at Youth Cafe, we also work with Boda, and they have the Boda Association of Kenya. And I'll tell you, we had a discussion one day. I'm trying to speak in low tone. And you know, they told us that they know how, if they get broke, they even know who they can blackmail and they can get money instantly, because they know which man goes to whose wife, what time, and the other way, or which man visits which other man's wife. But yes, as you're saying, indeed, they have a lot of intelligence. These people are at the very grassroots level, and we're also trying to engage them through the Boda movement. And we are trying to implement a concept on why patriots must support women. And by women, we mean their mothers, their sisters, their wives, their daughters. And you know, a very classical example. Assume you're a man and you do not empower your sister or your mother or whoever. And in today's cruel world, you die, or you know, before your children finish school. So if you have not empowered your, you know, your wife and all that, so we want to do this with Boda people, because Boda people, they can easily, they're young and most of them are young. They can easily cascade this information downwards. And because we want to show patriarchs, and I have said that I'm brought up in a very patriarchal society in Laikipia, that indeed women empowerment has more to do with impacts than the perceived competition. So the question was on how we can engage Bodas, but the best way to engage Bodas is position value for them. Most of them do not have driving license, like partner with NTSA to go and train them on, or even help them get driving licenses. Some of them do not have reflectors. They're not very expensive. Just go with some resource to the Boda guys. And if you do that, definitely you're able to capture their attention and also get value information. Of course, others is train them on safety, partnerships, information and education, and such. I hope I tried to respond.
Okay, thank you very much, Mumbiku. For sure, where value is, people tend to come. So we have another question from Jeremiah. How do cultural norms and values within the community influence attitudes towards gender-based violence, and what efforts and follow-ups are being made to challenge harmful beliefs? That question could be answered by our first speaker, Pascalia Nyaboke.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah, for your question. First thing I love to say is that this conversation needs to start in our dinner table. I have given you guys an example of my parents, for example. They tend to believe that no man can hit you just because they like hitting people. You ought to have done something to provoke him. We need to start having these conversations at the dinner table. Because if we take this conversation to schools or to universities, you better believe that people in schools and universities are very receptive of this message. You know, we need to start this conversation at home, in our houses, before we can even escalate them outside. And some of the ways that culture influences or attributes towards GBV is the patriarchal structures. For example, many societies uphold male dominance, and they believe that men have authority over women, including control. And how do they assert this control? Through violence. Another cultural norm is for example, victim blaming. Some cultures stigmatize survivors and they make it difficult for them to speak up or to seek justice. There's harmful traditions like child marriage, FGM, or widow inheritance. And these cultural practices reinforce gender inequalities and expose women and girls to GBV. I am a Kisu. And where I come from, I'm not saying all cases, but I will just give my own life experience. Where I come from, things like FGM are like breathing oxygen. Hii ni mambo yenye tumezoea, my friend. You close school over the December holiday and you're taken to Shags, they FGM you, and then you come back to Nairobi. And even child marriages, you know, things like that. And there are people who still believe that if you get somebody, a woman that has been circumcised, they will make a good wife. So sometimes you don't even have to go back to school. Once you have healed, you go to your husband's house. There's things like taboo, for example. Discussing GBV in some places is shameful. It's a taboo. Don't even dare. So what efforts can you use to challenge these harmful beliefs? We can start with community-led conversations. We can organize conversations that bring together traditional and religious leaders to just reinterpret cultural beliefs in a way that reject violence and they promote gender equality. There are places where they tell women to be submissive. They will even quote, for example, Genesis 1 chapter 1 says to be submissive. We're not saying that a woman should not submit, but what does submission look like? Does submission mean if I don't do something, you hit me? Does submission mean I only need to listen and no question asked? Another effort would be legal reforms and policy enforcement. Advocacy groups, even as youth, can push for stricter laws and better enforcement, and we can also in that way ensure that the youth or the survivors get justice and protection. There's another strategy on education and awareness. Schools and community programs, of course, they already teach about gender-based violence, but I will continue to insist that these conversations can start in our own homes. Let us involve our parents, let us involve our brothers who have grown up seeing our moms being hit by our fathers do not need to continue doing that. Let us start having that conversation at home. We need to also engage men and boys. We need to come up with programs that promote positive masculinity, that encourages men to be allies in ending GBV rather than perpetrators. We can also use media and digital campaigns, social media, radio, TV. I know Gen Z's, some do not listen to radio, but I know we're very heavy users of social media. We can use that to challenge stereotypes and to promote to promote survivor-centered narratives. We can use support systems and safe spaces. We can create more shelters or counseling centers and come up with reporting mechanisms that are being set up to support survivors and to break the cycle. In terms of follow-up, as I conclude, we can come up with monitoring and evaluation strategies. We can assess the effectiveness of the awareness campaigns and the interventions that we put out there. We can review the policies that we have tried to implement. Can we track the laws against GBV and how they're being enforced, and we push for accountability? There's also community feedback and engagement. We can do intergenerational dialogues with the leaders, religious leaders or political leaders after some time to just assess whether these strategies are making sense. And if they're not cast on stone, we can always review, revamp, and improve. And lastly, on a final thought, we can also empower programs for survivors. We can come up with empowerment programs for survivors. I have mentioned before that there are safe houses, and in these safe houses, it's one thing to keep the lights on, it's another thing to also empower these women, so that even after this woman has come out of this safe house, because she will not be there forever, she does not go back to her husband's house, and she also has a way of making money for herself to just do things her own way. And even in these empowerment programs, you can also look at the mental health aspect as well. Because even while she's in this safe house, are you also taking care of her mental health, or are you just concerned about what she's going to eat and where she's going to sleep? And finally, as I mute myself, is that cultural norms can be changed. They can always be changed. It only requires persistent advocacy, persistent education, and persistent collaboration at all levels, be it grassroots or national or global. I hope that answers your question, Jeremiah, and thank you.
Yes, thank you for that insight, Pascalia. I can see we have a question on, okay, let me read it. What do you think content such as the viral Sophia and Bumpy episode on Julia Gaizo's podcast, So This Is Love, what do you think such content does for the GBV conversation, especially with regard to advocacy and policy creation? I don't know if Javan, you've heard the podcast, but since you're in that space of digital activism, I'd like you to answer that question in less than 1 minute, kindly. Javan?
Will I give a quick response as we get Javan? Mumbika Youth Cafe here.
Yeah, sure. Less than a minute, kindly.
You can attest I'm a timekeeper. I think it raises awareness, but most importantly, it sparks a dialogue as it appears to generate considerable discussion online. I think it also tries to challenge norms, but most of what I hope it achieves this, to influence policy and the increased awareness and public dialogue. I think for me, those are the four things that comes closer to my mind when I think about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see Javan is not in a position to give his insight, but thank you, Mumbiku. That was very well. So we are coming to the end of today's webinar. It has been a good ride with everyone here. Thank you for making time to join in and educate ourselves on matters gender-based violence. So I'll give each speaker a minimum of 30 seconds. And when I say 30 seconds, I mean 30 seconds to make a parting shot, something small to the audience before we close. We can start with Pascalia, less than a minute. Then we go to Jav. Okay, I think Javan won't be able to talk. Then you can go to Mary. And lastly, Mumbiko. Less than a minute, guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why you always have to start with me, but it's okay, I don't mind. My closing remarks, ending gender-based violence starts with me, Pascalia. Violence against women starts with you. Culture should not be an excuse for harm. It should not, never. And we can always challenge these harmful norms. We can always amplify survivor voices, and we can always create safer communities. Let us keep this conversation going so that we don't have it today. As much as I do not want to keep talking about GBV, I want it to be a things of the past. I want us to, if we hear GBV, we have to look that up in the dictionary. We just need to take charge. We need to take action and create the change that we want to see. Thank you.
Mary.
Oh, sorry, I thought John was going next. My parting shot would be, let's not get tired. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. We are changing the landscape. We are changing what the future will look like for the next generation that comes in. And I believe we've been given such a gift that we're meeting on such a platform. And our voices can go beyond Kenya, beyond boundaries. So let us be the ones to make our grandparents proud. Let us be the ones to make our children proud of what we have done. So don't get tired, don't give up, keep talking, keep showing up, and I know change will take place. Thank you.
Mumbiko.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the Youth Cafe fraternity, I say thank you for this opportunity. My parting shot, of course, to men, GBV is not about women. To women, these patriarchs are not aliens. They are your fathers, brothers, sons. Let's embrace them. Let's inspire them to be champions and to be allies. Of course, we are young parents. Let's upbring our kids with a human touch. Let us also not try to alienate this story very much that, women, men, if we can be able to bring our kids, all of them, for impact, ready for impact and to change this world collaboratively, and everyone knowing that I can work with the other person, they're my sister, they're my mother, they're my daughters, the world will be a better place. Finally, I always tell young people, if you want doors to open, be informed, be a resource. Thank you very much. Good evening from Youth Cafe.
That is very nice. Thank you for your parting shots. They are really nice, and you can all hear it is one voice from different speakers saying we don't tire. Let's keep on keeping on, for this fight is not only for selected few, but for all of us. Thank you very much again. And lastly, I'd like to welcome the MD, Biobes Bonke Mulama, to give us closing remarks and to end the webinar. Bonke karibu.
It was a very powerful and inspiring session. I've really learned a lot, and I would say there is a lot of information outside there that we don't know. And I'm grateful for the speakers who have come and given us their thoughts and their wise words. And for my closing, I will say that this insightful and inspiring discussion, I want to extend my gratitude to all our speakers, panelists, and let's give them their flowers, guys. And also to the participants for your valuable contributions. I've seen the chat box is very active. I give you your flowers, and I thank you so much for sparing your time to actually break down and 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 get to tell people the information about this. And today's conversation has reaffirmed the power of youth-led movements in advocating against gender-based violence. I hope we all leave here motivated to take action in our communities. You've heard what Mary Vaughan has said, and Mambiko, all of the speakers are just actually uh, saying that we need the power, a youth-led movement. And I hope I was hoping to actually get to hear Javan drop some lines here and there, punchlines, a celebrity or a performer was on board. But I guess we'll have to buy tickets for his show to just listen to his talent. At Be Your Best actually is about embracing talent, embracing our skills, and also these youth conversations that we actually talked about. And at Be Your Best, we believe in empowering young people and celebrating the impact they create. Yeah, we actually have a lot of objectives that rhyme with what Youth Cafe is doing. They are actually our seniors and our mentors in this. And I'm great to have heard that Youth Cafe are also holding other organizations and working with this. I'd love to just share, extend our hand on that. So I'm excited to invite all of you to our 1 year anniversary celebration on April 12th, the coming month at HMP Launch. This will be a night to honor youth-led initiatives that we've just talked about here. And with this amazing lineup of dynamic speakers, we're going to have a number of speakers, comedians, artists, Javan also, we are hoping to invite you, and entertainers. And you don't want to miss this. So to show our appreciation for the effort, and the speakers have given us a lot of content, we are gifting complimentary tickets to our 4 distinguished speakers as a token of gratitude for sharing the expertise with us. I think they deserve more than this, but you can start from there. We are giving complimentary tickets for our distinguished speakers so that you can come celebrate with us. And for the rest of the participants, for all of us who wants to attend, please follow us on our Instagram to get more information. We're going to be unveiling more details and more people who are going to be performing at the event. It's going to be a very impactful, enjoyable, and fun event. So you're all invited to celebrate with us. And follow us on our Instagram, which is Be Your Best 202. We have a lined up of activities, very good youth dialogues that are coming up. And it's a lot for everyone to learn. So let's continue to work together to empower, uplift our communities. And thank you for sparing your time today to discuss GBV. And I wish you all a wonderful day. And remember to be your best. Thank you. May God bless you all. So, Marvis, I think you can close for us with just a short word of prayer, 1 minute, and then we can call it a close. Thank you all for attending this.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's believe and pray. Father Lord, we come before your presence, thanking you and glorify your name for this wonderful session that we've had, my God and my Father. King of all glory, we pray that all the knowledge that we've gained today, King of all glory, not be just for parking, my God and my Father, that we may drive it over, King of all glory, for impact. As each and every one of us, King of all glory, dispatched from here, let us, Jehovah, King of all glory, be champions, Jehovah, God of anti-GAG, be the King of all glory. My God and my Father, I do pray, Jehovah God, that you protect each and every one of us in this space, my God and my Father, and their families and their work. In the mighty name of God, I do pray, believing and trusting. Amen. We can leave the meeting at each one's own pleasure.
Indeed, and sorry, I've shared some few links. The link to become a member to Youth Cafe, and we have an African Global Democracy Coalition event. The last link is you can apply to be considered to attend in person or virtually. Thank you, and sorry for taking extra time.